Okay, we're going live now. We are going live now to Facebook. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Chana Weisberg, and I am here with two special guests. The topic for today is a Chinese girl's journey to Judaism. A dream comes true. For those of you who are joining us on Facebook, we are right now, if you want to join on Zoom, we are at chabad.org/Zoom. We have lots and lots of classes there that you can check out throughout the week, chabad.org/Zoom. For those of you who have joined us on Zoom, and there's a number of you, we welcome. Wow, the numbers have really gone up. Fascinating topic, fascinating people that are joining me today. Tell us where you are coming from. We have here Sophia, who joined us from Philadelphia, even though she looks like she's standing in Jerusalem. And we have Elisheva, who has joined us from England, from London. Correct, right? London, right? Elisheva,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, please, where are you joining us from? You could, for those of you on Zoom, you can write in the chat. I see Maryland, I see Amanda, Seattle, I see Sunset Park. And for those of you who are on Facebook, I see some of you have joined as well. Delaware, Connecticut, California, Toronto, Manalapan, Boca Raton, Huntington Valley, Irvine, California, Leeds, England, oh wow, so many from all over. Hicksville, New York, California, Southern California, Florida, Philadelphia, really, really all over. So many people. Eatontown, Georgia, from all over. We have so many people who have joined us. Thank you all for joining us. We are going to get right to the point. If you would like to ask any kind of questions, wow, and more people who are writing from really all over. Janice from Woodland, thank you for joining us. Northern Michigan, Orange County, California, really, really all over. Thank you all for joining us. This is I feel so privileged and humbled to be here with these two spectacular women. And we are going to get right to it to tell you their absolutely fascinating story and the message that we have. And it's so appropriate right before the holiday of Shavuot, when we accepted the Torah upon ourselves, how actually Elisheva accepted Judaism on herself, and Sophia reaccepted it in her journey towards Judaism. So it's really two women with two fascinating stories. Before we get to them, if you have any questions throughout this time, I will be checking on the chats. As well, I will be checking on the Facebook comments, so feel free to leave it on the Facebook Live, any comments that you have, or if you have any questions on the webinar chat, we'll be checking a little later on in this interview. So, ladies, we have a lot to talk about. Such an exciting story. A few months ago, the Jewish woman put out this incredible, incredible story from Sophia. Sophia, wave to everybody. Sophia is a regular writer to us, and she really writes about her journey. She loves to travel to many different places together with her husband, and she has incredible stories from wherever she writes about. She actually is from the Soviet Union, and this interview is actually dedicated in memory of her grandmother, who passed away very recently. How long ago, Sophia?
On May 6th, 2020.
So her grandmother is Zelda Bas David, and this interview is really dedicated in memory of her grandmother, who was very close to her heart and is really a very big part of her story. She also wants to dedicate this in part to Chayagiti Bas Munya, a dear friend of hers who also has recently passed away. So let's get to the story about what happened. Several months ago, we put out the story from Sophia about one of her travels. And in one of her many, many travels, she went to Singapore about 10 years ago, was it, Sophia?
Yes.
I'm going to let you tell the story. I'm just giving a little intro, though. About 10 years ago, she went to Singapore with her husband. And unexpectedly there, she met a young woman, who she didn't know at the time what her name was. She later discovered, much later, she discovered her name was actually this Elisheva, who's with us. But at the time, she met this girl from China who wanted to become Jewish. And we're going to let Sophia and Elisheva tell their story, but the words of this girl so inspired Sophia at the time that it left an indelible impression upon her. So much so that it actually made an impression on her in her own path towards Judaism. She wrote this story to us, just telling us all about the beautiful experiences that she had there, hoping that this girl actually was able to realize her dreams. After that story came out, Sophia was deluged with tons of comments from people from all over the world who, first of all, were so inspired by the story. We got comments nonstop, but who a few of them also mentioned, hey, I think I know that lady. In fact, I think I know that lady, and I think I know where she is. In fact, she lives in London right now, and her name is Elisheva Martinetti. And then Sophia reconnected with Elisheva, and then we came out with their whole new story of what happened, the exact procedure of what exactly happened with each of them. And we had to republish a whole new story, a second part of that first version. So if any of you never believed in dreams or in really finding and making real your goals in life, this is for you, because this is about really realizing your dreams and aspirations and making them come true in the most beautiful, spectacular way ever. So let's start with our guests. Sophia, you want to start with, that was just a little overview. There's so much more to say, but can you explain to us how and when you met Elisheva?
Absolutely. I'll be so honored, and I'm just in such an awe of having Elisheva join us today, because when I did write this story, I never in my life imagined that there will be a part two, a conclusion and continuation.
And I just want you all to know who are watching, when both Sophia and Elisheva came on, we tested this about a week ago. And it was the first time that we all met each other face to face. And it was just, we were all going, I can't believe this is happening, that we're actually seeing one another, the joy and the feelings of just overwhelmed, where we just all felt so overwhelmed with emotions at that point in time. Sorry, Sophia, go ahead.
About 10 years ago, my husband and I have traveled to Singapore. And when we travel the world, the first thing that we do is we decide as to how we're going to spend our Shabbos. I was born in the former Soviet Union into a communist regime. And after immigrating to the United States in 1989,
I'm just sharing with everyone your screen.
Oh,
That's a
this is my precious grandmother, Zelda. Zelda in a typical garment, sold in the late 1970s. When we travel to Singapore, we have contacted Chabad, which I often do when we travel the world, and we try to make arrangements to spend and celebrate Shabbat in a proper way with Chabad family, the Shluchim, the people that decide to dedicate their life and build a community or provide access to Shabbat and kosher food to people that travel the world, such as myself. And we have made all the proper arrangements, and this happened, I believe, in December of 2008, right, Elisheva? Does that sound right?
Perhaps 2009, I think.
I think it was December, or maybe something like that. Very late December or early, maybe January of 2009. So this was 10 years ago, and I went to light Shabbat candles, and this is what I do every Friday, regardless of where I am in the world. Shabbat has no exclusions. So I make sure that wherever I am in the world, I light Shabbat candles, and I welcome Shabbos and celebrate it in the proper way. So as I was lighting candles, I noticed that there is a very timid person standing behind me, very uncertain as to what to do. And I try to be aware of my surroundings and mindful, and I do believe that every situation that I'm sent to, there's lessons to be learned and there's sparks to ignite. So I try to start the conversation. At that time, Elisheva's English wasn't as fluent, British English. And, you know, I did understand that she was mesmerized just observing me light Shabbat candles. And then she asked me a very profound question, which moved me. And she asked me if I was a real Jew. So considering that this custom of lighting Shabbat candles and celebrating Shabbat was not something that was granted to me as a gift right away when I was born, but I had to rediscover my identity and actually help my entire family remember our traditions and learn about our heritage. Because of the communist regime, we were all unfortunately not given an opportunity to celebrate Shabbat and follow the customs of Jewish law. So I didn't necessarily consider myself the real Jew, because I always felt so intimidated myself, because I felt like such a incompetent person, and I sometimes still do, because I wasn't born into this, and everything that I do I have acquired by slowly climbing up the ladder of knowledge. So she really moved me by that question, and made me really think, am I a real Jew? And I said, well, I was born Jewish, but, you know, I started lighting just, a few years back, and I welcomed her to join me. And she was, very timid and intimidated by that. And then after that, I asked her if she's coming with me for a meal. And she said no. And I felt that it was just too much. She was really overwhelmed. It was not her personality to just, join the meal. And I went downstairs, but then I couldn't eat. I couldn't just get my mind off this beautiful soul. So I had to go through the building, because she knows how to hide quite well. And eventually I'm persistent, and I found Elisheva. And that's when I was able to get her story out. And that story forever changed me, because I have never in my life met such a committed and such a wholesome person that was just so inspired by my own heritage. And while
Elisheva, do you remember what you were thinking when you met Sophia, when you met her at that time?
It's a little bit blurry for me, because back then I was very nervous and timid, like Sophia was saying. So I felt
you changed. You seemed like you totally changed.
Yeah,
you're out there now. You're teaching. You're a teacher who teaches actually Hasidic philosophy in London, England. Unbelievably.
Thank God. Sometimes.
And Jewish law to high school girls on a very high level. That's amazing. But at that time,
this journey sort of forced me out of my shells and become a little bit more, open and different things.
Wow. So Sophia, you saw her and you felt
so, yes, I mean, I was very interested, because I have never met anyone from Elisheva's. At that time she wasn't Elisheva yet, but from I think you're Ruth Elisheva, right?
Yes, Ruth Elisheva.
Ruth Elisheva. I mean, considering the significance.
So how appropriate for Shavuot,
yes. Yes. So I think that in today's age, and you're the modern day Ruth, at least to the Chabad world and to the Jewish world that read about you. But I would love for you to kind of, you shared the story with me, but there would be so special for everyone to just hear your entire story from your perspective, and how your mother found Judaism living in
Sophia,
China.
you then wrote about the story. And you wrote about this woman that you met, this young girl that you met, and how you were so inspired by her, and how you just felt that you personally were going to grow in your own Judaism. I think you said because she looked at how you were she looked at how you were dressed, and
yes.
What did you say then? What were your words?
I don't want to spoil the story that Elisheva is going to share, but I was growing, and the whole idea of wearing skirts was very uncomfortable to me. I'm involved in a business world, and I always wore a pantsuit. So when Elisheva shared with me that her biggest dream was to wear long skirts and be dressed just like all other Jewish women, I didn't want to upset her and tell her that I'm not that woman that does that. So I didn't upset her, because it was just not the time, but I decided that I don't want to be that person that just remains silent without making a change. So soon after I um, decided for myself to buy myself the long skirts that Elisheva was longing for, and
Elisheva, I wish we could
connect
see
to
what you're
that.
wearing. Your sleeves. We can't see you, but I can assure you that she's wearing long sleeves and a skirt.
I'm definitely very proud every day.
Every day. Okay. So Elisheva, you then later on, you heard about the story somehow. Is that right? People
Yes.
told you what
So
happened?
so it was one Motzei Shabbos, a friend of mine sent me a text message, and she said, "Oh, I read the article, but it sounded like you. Is it really you?" Because in the article it didn't actually mention my name. So I started reading the article, and I was like, "Wait a minute, this actually is me." So I don't think there are many Chinese 16-year-old girls in Singapore Chabad house lighting Shabbos candles. So then my husband said to me, you better contact this lady that wrote about you, because it seems like at the end of the article, she said she wanted to know what happened to the part 2 of the story. So I was like, should I? So then I contacted Sophia and we spoke, and it was amazing. From then on, like, I was happy to hear that someone remembered me from then, because I myself actually can't even recall what I was like then. It was more like just on this massive journey ahead of me, and I was just living from one second to the next. And looking back, I think there were lots of changes in my personality.
I just want to share a picture of here is Elisheva with her husband and her little daughter today, right? How long ago was this picture taken?
So this was maybe say 7 months ago.
7 months ago. So this is a current picture of Elisheva with her husband and her daughter, where they live now in London, England.
Yes. So that's why Sophia told me that we need to write up the story for all those people that wanted to know. So then
So what did happen? Tell us, fill us in on the details that you shared in your second story.
Okay, so I wrote about how I actually found Judaism. It all started from my mother. So one of
always the mothers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the women, right?
Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest sages in our history, said that everything he has and all his 24,000 students had is all because of his wife. His wife sort of supported him, encouraged him, and that's why he was able to achieve that much. And I could say the same about my mother, because without my mother's encouragement and inspiration, I wouldn't be here today. Definitely not. So,
How did she encourage you? What was it that she did that pushed you to? Did she tell you to become Jewish? What was it that she did exactly?
In short, yes. So I was born in a little city called Jixi, and it's very close to the Siberia part of Russia. So growing up, Chinese government is also based on communism. So I guess Sophia and I could have a lot of common language in this area. In terms of education system, in terms of the brainwashing, and how schools are really just brick factories that everyone is expected to grow out to be exactly the same. No questions are allowed, and everyone's only goal in life is to get more and more marks. That was me when I was
sharing a picture of you when you were young. This is you in China?
Yes, this was me on one of our family trips.
Okay. Go ahead.
I guess the biggest goal for every single Chinese child, and by the way, when I was born in the 1990s, there was the one-child policy, and that's why I don't have any siblings. So every single family, the parents would put all their effort and all the attention on their one child to succeed academically. And there was tremendous pressure coming from the school, from the parents, from the grandparents. My mother used to work as a teacher in the school, so she knew the system quite well. And she noticed a very big flaw, and that is like there's no truth in what the school is really sort of promoting. And she wanted me, her only daughter, to live a different type of life, to actually go to look for the truth, which she didn't know what was gonna be. She just thought that, it's definitely not communism and definitely not atheism, because it doesn't make sense that everything should happen by chance. So my mother's favorite saying is, when a person is ready, when a person is sincere, then Hashem, God will send you the right people to guide you and lead the way. So at this point, Hashem sent us a prophet of a man who himself is Chinese, but somehow he was introduced as a young child to many different philosophies, including Judaism. Now, he actually had in his possession a Chinese, translated in Chinese, a little booklet, a collection of stories and sayings from the Talmud and from the Kabbalah. It's very strange. Now I look back, like I feel like, why would anyone be interested in translating those things into Chinese? But I guess for me. So he actually gave this book to my mother, along with many other books on different things. But my mother was reading it. I was 11 years old at the time, and she felt this was what she was looking for all along. And she very much resonated with everything the book was saying. And therefore she decided one day that she's Jewish. Obviously she didn't know, in order to be qualified as Jewish, your mother has to be Jewish and, you know, all that. She felt like she has to be Jewish because she agrees with everything it says. Then she came to me and she said, I'm Jewish, I'm your mother, so you're Jewish too. So we're gonna learn more about Judaism. Now, initially I wasn't so interested because I was very
you were
much
an 11-year-old little girl.
as well as, you know, like I was also in school, as well as brainwashed like everybody else, and I wanted to succeed. I have no time for this sort of religions, you know, like, you know. So, and also in the school they make sort of godly things sound like hocus pocus, and, you know, they tell you there's no scientific proof and there's no point in these sort of things. So I thought my mother was sort of wasting time, but they say a Jewish woman has all the wisdom she needs to build her family. So she used to photocopy pages from this book, and she left it everywhere around the house. Wherever I went in the house, there was a copy somewhere, you know, with stories of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yoshua. In the beginning, it was all very strange to me. It sounds so foreign. I have no idea what it's all about. But slowly, I became more familiar with it. I became more interested until I myself started reading the book that she was always recommending. And the first page had a quote from the Talmud. I think it's taken very out of context, but back then I read everything and believed in it literally. And it says over there, anyone who rejects idol worship is considered Jewish. So I thought to myself, I don't have a God, and I don't believe in anything, you know, resembles idol worshiping. So I must be Jewish. So that's how I concluded it. And then I started reading on, and over there they have selected Jewish laws. And it says, for example, that Jewish people wash hands before they eat. And it doesn't say how you wash hands, and you wash your hands before you eat bread and the different things. So I started washing my hands 30 times, good and well, with soap before I had all my meals every day. And I felt very inspired through doing this. And the more I was taking upon myself, the more inspired I was feeling, and I wanted to know more. And I heard that the Jewish people pray 3 times a day, and I didn't realize there's a set text that you read from a prayer book. I felt like, you know, people went out to the field and they would build a altar, like, you know, they say about Abraham, like built a mizbeach, like, and then he davened to Hashem. So I thought that's the way you're supposed to speak to Hashem. So I myself also went to outside in the garden. I found myself pieces of stones. I built a little structure that I imagined to be the mizbeach. I also took a jug of oil from home. I anointed the altar. I was calling out Hashem's name, and it felt so spiritual, and I was very inspired, basically.
Elisheva, I do want to point out that Hashem did hear you.
Yes,
You were
that's
heard.
for sure.
So you know, it worked.
And mind you, I was speaking Chinese as well, so
Not a problem.
God hears every language, right?
Right, for sure.
exactly.
So what brought you from there to actually go to the place, to Singapore, where Elisheva found you? How did that come about?
Right. So this little booklet is very thin, and I finished reading it fairly quickly, and I felt like it wasn't enough. I want to know more. And we spoke to this teacher of ours, and we asked him what to do. And he said to my mother, in order to look for the real truth in Judaism, China is not the place, because the government will never let you, and, you know, they conceal the truth. So you're going to have to do what God told Abraham to do, which is to leave from your homeland, from your father's house, from your birthplace. So it was a very big statement at the time, because coming from the small city I was,
How old were you at this time?
I was 12, 13, like this
Wow.
age. And my mother decided, if that's what it is, then that's what we're gonna have to go, you know, that we're gonna have to do. So it involved a lot of financial resources and lots of paperwork. and all my degrees and certificates, everything had to be translated into English and notarized. I won't bore you with the details, but it was very complicated to actually eventually get to Singapore.
I have a question for you, Elisheva. Was it dangerous? Was it like in terms of communist government? Was it easy in that sense? Like the fact that you were, could you Google at that time? Well, Google is probably didn't happen. But if they would to find out that you're reading religious texts and going to Singapore in order to be part of the Jewish community, was that something like legal during the time in China?
I think at that time, yes. And I actually found out different things that the government used to do to silence certain people who are inclined to religions, not necessarily Judaism, any type of official religion.
I want you to fast forward to what happened in Singapore then. You found
right.
Well, how did you get to Singapore?
So it was actually very funny. One night, my mother and I just sat in front of a world map. And we're like, okay, China is not the place. Where should we go? So we're looking at different options. We're looking at England. We're looking at America. We're looking at different things, but they all seem to be so very far because we have no connections, no relatives, nothing. And again, like divine providence, we saw an article saying that in Singapore, there are such schools that are willing to accept a minor, someone who's underage, to come as an exchange student. And that's really what gave me the excuse, if you want, to be able to leave China and go to Singapore under the disguise of being a student. And that's how I got there. And
so you're right. You wrote up so poignantly about your mother traveling with you to Singapore, and then you knew that she would have to say goodbye because you were just going there as an exchange student, and obviously she had to go back to China. And as a mother, when I read that part, that really ripped at my heart. Sophia, I'm sure you felt
exactly like that is very raw. Just
unbelievable.
The way you helped yourself
how
together.
How did you feel when you were in this place, in this foreign land, this foreign country, being set up as an exchange student and saying goodbye to your mother who was going back to China, knowing that you were there for a greater purpose, but still having to leave the person who you loved so much?
You know, it was now that I have a daughter myself, I don't understand how my mother could have done it, because there's no way I can just give up my daughter and ask her to go somewhere that I don't even know where she's going to end up being. But at the time, that's what it is. In my mother's eyes and in her heart, she very sincerely believed that this is her moment of sacrificing, like Avram sacrificed to Yitzchak, she was sacrificing me to Hashem. And she felt like that's something as a mother, it's her obligation. She kept telling me, she said, you are a gift to me from God. And if Hashem now wants you back, I can't hold you back. I can only support you and do everything I can to make your dream come true and make
it was like she was sacrificing really her own personal, desire of being with you for something that she realized was a much greater goal for you and your family.
I mean, in addition to that, like also her friends and, her community was giving her a hard time because in everyone else's eyes, this was just bizarre. Like, why would anyone want to send a girl this age so far, not knowing what the future holds? It's completely crazy. And, and it was very difficult. But my mother
when you were in Singapore, what was you were studying there in the school, and at the same time you were pursuing Judaism? How did that work?
Right. So the school I attended really wasn't a proper school. It was sort of a tutoring school that prepares people to pass exams. And therefore, the school only lasted half day. So meaning every day I had from 8 o'clock till 12:30. That was the whole school day. And in the afternoon, I used to go to the library to do homework and to catch up the studies because I arrived in Singapore actually 2 months after the school year started, and I was very behind. And in the evening time, I used to go to the Chabad house to learn and to join the minyan, because again, as I was telling you, that I was quite literal. So whatever I read, I took it really too hard. I read somewhere that it's a praiseworthy thing for a Jew to daven, to pray with a minyan. And so I thought, like, every single Jew must do that, and I want to prove that I'm a good Jew. So I made sure to go there to daven mincha and mariv with the minyan as much as I could.
And the evening prayers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You thought you had to be part of the group of 10 men.
Yes,
the quorum of 10, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it did occur to me, it was a bit strange that I was the only woman there, like there was no one else there. But I thought, listen, not everyone is It's the
So
same.
is that where you started to learn more about Judaism? When did you start learning?
So, like I was saying, at home, I was reading this little booklet. So I had
Right. No, I mean, when you
like
came to Singapore, when did you learn? When
minimal
did you
knowledge
learn the real meaning of Judaism and what
in
it really
the
is?
Chabad
That wasn't
house.
such a literal level.
In a Chabad house, I went to the library, and they had a lot of resources, and I just sat down and read all the books that I could get my hands on. So
Wow.
slowly.
And Sophia, it was there that you found that you actually met Elisheva.
So I just I also want to share the fact that, you know, even though to you I was a real Jew, as you called me, I was as lost as you
What
were.
did Elisheva say to you at the time?
Well, she asked me if I'm a real Jew when I was lighting Shabbat candles, and I didn't feel like I was a real Jew because I was learning myself. So my first holiday was Shavuot, when it actually was the second, because we came to Philadelphia in 1989, and my grandmother was bargaining for chicken in ShopRite supermarket, and Mrs. Batsheva Shemtov, who remains to be a very dear and close friend, stood behind her in line. It was definitely meant to be, as my grandmother was bargaining, of course, in Yiddish, because if it's not Russian, it has to be a language that is understood in in the culture where you are at. So that had to be Yiddish. So, but Sheva Shem Tov told my grandmother that, you know, it's a treif chicken. It's not a kosher chicken. And my grandmother has not heard that word since she was a little girl, right after the Soviet Revolution, Communist Revolution. So they became good friends. And my first holiday was Passover. I was about 13. I just turned 13 years old. And I remember that, you know, we were very confused. What kind of meal is that? I mean, they're serving parsley and salt water. Like, even us, the immigrants, we would boil eggs and potatoes, and, you know, we still laugh about it. And it lasted for so long. And my grandmother says, oy vey, when she had to drink the fourth cup. And the Shemto family still remember that every Pesach, because she couldn't drink that much. And
truth is,
so
we're
I
all on
belong to strange people with strange custom. And the second holiday was Shavuot, where we study all night. And I didn't know it's not a custom to do this every week. So I thought to myself, oh, we eat at 12 and then we go to a synagogue. Like, I couldn't understand, like you, that this is once a year type of a thing. Not, you know, it's a holiday, not a normal situation. So I resonate with this a lot, because just like Elisheva, there was nobody guiding me, and I had to find bits and pieces of information. So yeah.
Well, the truth is, I mean, I was born religious, and my father is a shliach in Toronto, but we're all on a journey. You know, the journey is all of us, and the journey in Judaism, that's really the beauty of the journey of Judaism, that we're all reaching higher and trying to grow more and become more connected to God and to our Jewish soul. So Elisheva, tell us some more what happened afterwards. I know at one point you actually learned in Australia, you learned in Israel. How did that go about? How did that happen?
Right. So after sort of learning in a Chabad house in Singapore for a year and a bit, the Shliach, Rabbi Abergil, arranged for me to speak to Rabbi Goodnick, a Dayan from the Beis Din from Sydney, because in Singapore, obviously, there's no Jewish court. So in order to facilitate the Giyur process...
So I just want to translate for our audience. He's a member of the Supreme Court of Law, I guess, in Judaism, and he would facilitate the conversion. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So I got connected with Rabbi Goodnick, and he sort of guided me through the official process. And at the time, I just finished my exam. I was year 10 age. That is Americans, I don't know, 11th grade or a 9th grade. I don't know.
How old were you at that time?
I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And then after I finished the exam, it was my age to go to high school. And I learned about the importance of learning Torah in a kosher environment, in a Jewish school. But unfortunately, officially, I wasn't yet Jewish. And I wanted to go to a Jewish school, and I wrote to various schools applying to go there and explain this background and situation. I said I'm on the journey, and I'm officially like sort of in connection with the rabbanim, with the rabbis, And the first person to reply me was Rabbi Gurevich, the principal then at Beth Rivka College in Melbourne, the Chabad school there. And he wanted to help me and or different turns of events. And eventually I couldn't go there because of visa issues. And I ended up being in Kaiser Tara College in Sydney. That's the Chabad house, Chabad school in Sydney. And that's how I really ended up in Australia.
Wow. And from there you traveled to Israel?
So after high school in Sydney, I went to a seminary in Sfat.
Israel. Wow.
Yeah.
And at what point, at what age did you actually convert to Judaism?
So at the end of 16, turning 17.
17.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you converted? What was your feelings like?
I tell you something, it was very interesting because each time I would speak to the Rabbi Gutnick, and he would ask me the same question. Is this something you really want to do? The Jewish people are a persecuted nation. We went through pogroms and the Holocaust. Back in China, at least you lived a comfortable life physically, let's just say, right? You really want to jump into this fire? And I always said to him, of course I do. My mother sold the house for this. Like I went through all this just to come here. There's no doubt in my mind I want to join the Jewish nation. I don't care about the pogroms. And even at the last moment, I went into the mikveh to finalize the conversion. And he still asked me the question, are you sure this is what you wanted to do? And I was like, yes, I do. So Baruch Hashem, it was a week before Rosh Hashanah. And I finished the whole process, and I was so excited. That Rosh Hashanah was very, very special to me. And in fact, that the date I completed the conversion, which was the 24th day of the month of Elul, it's very, very special to me because later on, when my shidduch came up, right, my husband also became Jewish on the same day. So when I was
the story gets better and better. Sophia, did you know this?
There's a part 3 about your husband's story now.
Exactly,
right.
Sophia, we need a third part.
So when people told me about him, like I read the story and I felt like I was reading my own, feelings. So I was like, this can't be. So I was like, hey, this is another sign from Hashem that, this is meant to be. So
where's your husband from?
He's originally from Italy, from Milan.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, amazing. And what made you chose the name Rus Elisheva? Rus is very related to the holiday of Shavuot. What is it that made you choose that name?
Right. So along my journey, there are moments when I felt a little frustrated. One of the hardest thing for me was the feeling of going back to zero, to nothing. What I mean is that in China, I was quite comfortable in terms of academia. Like I was the top of my class, and I was always the one that teaches others, and I was comfortable. I was respected in class, and I was used to that, to get like 100 in all my tests. But suddenly come here, like I feel like I know nothing, and that was really difficult. And also straight away, I had no family and I had no friends and all of that. Like I felt very lonely and helpless. And because of the financial situation, I really felt, is this really worth it? Like, why am I doing this? And in times like this, I always reflect on Rus, the first, I know, the most famous convert in Jewish history. She originally was a princess in her home country, right? And she must have lived a life that is above and beyond my comfort as a princess of a nation. Yet she could say to her mother-in-law, your nation is my nation. Like she should be willing to give up all that. And I drew inspiration from that. And whenever I had a moment of weakness, I think back to Megillas Rus. And when I finished the conversion process, there was no doubt in my mind that I want to be called Rus, because I want to live just like her, someone that would always remember, for Judaism, everything is worth it.
Wow, that's so special. As you say that, Sophia, it reminds me of a lot what you write about, how you left the Soviet Union and you felt like there was nothing. Everything was like you were homeless for a little point in time because you didn't have your home. You left your home, your comfort, everything. And again, that was also to pursue a better life in Judaism as well, which is what you've become today, so much more connected.
Before I went on the interview, I spoke with my dear friend and mentor, Batsheva Shem Tov, and she quoted Jeremiah, the prophet, who said, what you are is God's gift to you. What you become is your gift to God. And I think that so beautifully pretty much sums up the story that is being shared. I think everybody wants to know what happened. Well, that's at least something I would want to know right away. What happened to your mom?
Oh,
Yes.
right.
Right?
So
And how did she feel about it? I mean, I'm sure you told her you were converting. What was her reaction that you were actually going through the official conversion procedure?
you know, actually, unofficially, my mother was like my rabbi in a way, because when I was learning in Singapore, whatever I was learning during the day, I would talk to her in the evening and I would translate everything back into Chinese and tell her what I learned that day, because she also had those questions which we had no answers for in the beginning. So whenever I had a hard time, she used to sort of use what I told her to tell back to me. So for example, once I was sort of bumping into like difficulties wherever I turned, and I didn't have paperwork, had no visa, and I needed to leave Singapore. I didn't know where to go next and all that. And I said to my mother, I'm coming home. I can't deal with this. So my mother told me, listen, when the Jewish people left Egypt, you know, they came in front of the Red Sea. They also had enemies chasing after them. In front of them is the big ocean. They didn't know what to do, right? And until one person had to actually hop into this ocean. And then when the water reached the neck, that's when Hashem opened the sea. So my mother said, you don't need to worry. Hashem is caring for you, and you plunge.
Wow, what a special soul. Unbelievable.
So obviously my mother was excited for me all the way. When I converted, she was crying and she was celebrating with me. And we got reunited really after 10.5 years when I got married last year. And
where did you get married?
In Stamford Hill in London.
In Stamford Hill, London.
Yeah. So my mother came, and I mean, the community really gave my mother a very good, how should I say it? They told her very good things about me. So my mother had a lot of moments of nachas, like she had quite, she was quite proud of me. And she hasn't converted yet. She's still living in China, but I hope, Mirza Hashem, one day she's gonna come and join me, and I'm gonna slowly teach her more about Judaism, and she's gonna join me.
Wow, incredible. Elishava, tell us about what you do now. I mean, I know now you're on maternity leave, but before maternity leave, what were you doing?
So I after seminary, I went back to Melbourne for a year to study in a seminary there, and now I'm in London, and I teach in the Lubavitch Senior Girls School. Our principal, Rabbi Lu, really helped me along the way to get me the paperwork, to encourage me. And I work for the high school here. I teach.
What are you teaching?
I teach different subjects: Jewish history and Chumash and math.
Okay. And you told me that now you're on maternity leave. You're doing Jewish law, right?
Yeah. So
are
now
you teaching
I'm doing
those laws that you learned?
Zoom lessons on Jewish law.
Incredible! What an unbelievable story. Absolutely.
Elisheva, I just keep on thinking how it must have been very strange for you 10 years after our 2-hour brief meeting in life and in time and space. Many people have come up to you asking that you should write a story, but I didn't know where to ask. I didn't know what happened to you, and I found, I dreamed about the end, and when I came back home to Philadelphia, I actually, before I came back home, that after Shabbat ended, I am a gal on a mission, so I went to the rabbi's house, apartment, and I said to him, do you know that you have a Chinese girl living in the building? She's floating, like you can't even find her, because I was looking for you the next day, on Shabbos day, I couldn't find you, and I'm pretty persistent. So the rabbi says, yes, he knows, and he says she doesn't know yet, but I've already contacted the court, the rabbi from the Jewish court who would take her to the conversion. So I knew I knew the secret, and I was just so excited. I was thinking, oh my God, she doesn't know yet. And he said that you didn't know it yet because they were still giving it a couple of weeks to see how serious you are, because Judaism is not encouraging conversions. We believe that everybody can shine where they are, and there's 7 laws for non-Jews. So we don't go and invite everybody.
Seek out
the best version of themselves. So I said to the rabbi, like, what can I do to help? So he says, she want to leave something behind for those long skirts. And I said, absolutely. And then a couple of months later, I emailed the rabbi. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. I didn't know where to find you. It was way before, all those media where you can easily find people. And I was told that you already went to Australia. And I wrote up my ending of the story that sometimes before I fall asleep, I imagine this timid Chinese-born Jewish woman walking the streets of Jerusalem. In my dream, she's holding a hand of a skirt-wearing daughter, and you have a daughter, while her kippah-wearing husband, clearly, is talking to her in a soft and kind voice. Her warrior of a mother is walking right next to them soon, and she's holding a complete book of Psalms. So I couldn't have dreamed up the ending. This was a dream for how your life worked out. And just to know and to have you call me and to tell me that's exactly what happened and even better. It's just such joy and such feeling of completion and full circle and inspiration for those that are born Jewish. And like Hannah said, we're all searchers, we're all returnees, we're all trying to find the best version of ourselves. So you inspire my nation and now your nation, and you're a true epitome of Ruth. The original Ruth would be very proud that you're carrying her name.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
What also encouraged me, what was so interesting when the two of you met about a week ago here on Zoom when we made that call, is that Elisheva, you said so many people wanted to write up your story. Right. And as the humble person that you are, you just weren't interested. You weren't interested in being a public person until Sophia
really
just
to Sophia, because if not for her article, I was just gonna hide. Like I don't think I was ever gonna share the story, maybe with a few friends, but
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't know where to ask you exactly, so I just threw it up like your mother wisely said. You come to the sea and you just jump. So I jumped, and look what happened. You see, it was a good jump.
What a beautiful
We're writing
story.
A book next, right, Elisheva? Our book.
Right.
Okay, I want to ask both of you to complete this sentence. Something that encourages me when I'm going through a challenge is. Who wants to start?
Elisheva, why don't you start?
I would say my memory and experience in Singapore.
Wow.
It says that every single Jewish person is supposed to think of himself leaving Egypt that day and relive that experience of from slavery to freedom. And my year in Singapore was really just that. So I always told my husband I have a second Haggadah on Pesach where I tell the story of me leaving Egypt and coming to the Torah. And wow. So when I find things difficult, I think back to the experience then, to my sweet memories of the Singapore Chabad house and the sweet community and, all the friends that I had there. And it gives me strength.
I'm sure it must have taken an incredible amount of strength and perseverance to continue in that way. Sophia, what do you feel? Something that encourages you when you go through a challenge? Because you've had many, from your exodus in the Soviet Union to where you've come to today.
I have learned to trust that God is going to catch me every time I jump or fall. And this story is yet again a reminder and an encouragement that we're never alone, and that Hashem runs the world in a very intricate and very involved way. Because Elisheva thought that, that's it, the end of the story. And then suddenly 10 years later, out of nowhere, right, behind the scene work that, I had to evolve to become that writer, because, it's not like I just wrote, I couldn't have written it 5 years ago. I just wasn't that person yet. So God is involved and is patiently waiting. And when we fall or when we need to jump, He, capital H, is always there.
Absolutely. One more sentence. To grow in my connection or commitment to my soul and Judaism, every day I try to.
You say it first off, yeah.
To be a giver. Because when you're a giver, you're a mirror to Hashem.
I didn't tell you guys about this part that I was putting you on the spot. I'm sorry, but you're doing great. To be a giver. Absolutely. So beautiful.
I would say to do something that overcome myself, something that is a little hard for me. if I know it's the right thing to do, I will overcome my natural feelings and still do it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, you beautiful ladies, for joining us today. I just am going to go through if there's any questions that anyone wants to have answered, feel free to ask them. As a child, she put together a few stones on the ground and built an altar. If only she could climb up a mountain. I think she has climbed up that mountain. What is Elisheva's most joyful experience as a young Jewish woman so far?
Most joyful experience? There are so many.
There's too many tonight. I can imagine that. That's a hard one. I guess you have a joy with your daughter, no?
Of course. Of course.
How did Elisheva learn English? Did she learn it in China or when she left?
So in school, we had English lessons. I would assume it's similar to the Spanish lessons in America. It's like the second language where you learn to write and read, not so much speaking. So my English got a lot better when I arrived in Singapore, because I noticed that in order to learn more about Judaism, I need to be able to speak English to read those books. So I guess there was a need for it.
Wow. Briefly, how did Elisheva's husband come to Judaism? How did they meet? I think we're going to need a whole other thing for this.
I guess I'll leave him to tell the story.
Okay, we'll have to invite you both back. Wow, Elisheva and Sophia, thank you very much for your stories. I hope you all have a wonderful Shavuot and you both continue inspiring people to be on the path and find the path to Hashem. Thank you, dear Chana Weisberg, for doing this and leading this speech. It was so touching and encouraging. What can I say? You ladies are absolutely amazing. You know, just looking on, amazing. Thank you for all your things from Israel, from all over. Wonderful story. Everyone is really thanking you for this wonderful, wonderful retelling of the amazing story and your amazing continual story of your life, because the journey continues. I think this is a fascinating way to lead up to the receiving of the Torah. We're leading up to the holiday of Shavuot, the holiday where we re-accept the Torah upon ourselves. Every day we need to re-accept it upon ourselves. And this is a beautiful way of showing how two incredible Jewish women are constantly growing on their path and vision towards truth. So thank you both for joining us, Elisheva and Sophia. And this was really fun. We're going to have to do it again. We'll have to do that continuation. Sophia, get working on it. We want that story about Elisheva's husband. And I just want to wish you all a wonderful, happy Shavuot. And may we re-accept the Torah again with true joy and true inwardness, because both of you are an example of that true inwardness and really applying the messages of Judaism to your own personal lives. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for joining us, all the participants who have joined us on Facebook Live and on Zoom. Someone asked if this is going to be recorded. This is recorded on Facebook. You will see it there, and we will also be putting this up on Chabad.org. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.